Well, we're coming to the final session of the day, and I have to apologize for the panelists that the slippage that's occurred, because this is an important panel. One of the things that used to keep us from sleeping soundly in Ottawa in the 79 to 80 period was the thought that at any time of any day and night all across Canada, large numbers of Canadians who had never met someone from Indochina were meeting large numbers of people from Indochina who'd never met a Canadian. And we just wondered what the mechanics of that would be, or perhaps what the physics of that would be. Well, it turns out that sometimes, and in fact most times, it worked pretty well. Sometimes it worked extremely well, and occasionally it didn't work very well at all. That's the subject of this next panel, and we've asked Brian, are you there? I'm right here. Oh, okay. We've asked Brian Dick to chair this particular panel. Brian has worked with MCC Manitoba since 2007, helping that organization's constituents sponsor refugees for Canada's private sponsorship program. But since May 2012, he's been the chair of the Canadian Sponsorship Agreement Holders Association. And I must say, when we contacted him, I think we found a lifelong friend. And so I turn it over to you, okay?
Well, thank you very much, Mike, and thanks for giving me that call. When I started sitting in on those meetings, I started getting the sense that this would be an incredible conference, and I'm right. It has been, my head is full of all sorts of things in the last couple of days, and it's going to continue, I'm sure. We've talked a lot about the different stages along this, how this, let's call it a miracle, happened. We'll continue to talk about that and go to the point where the rubber met the road in Canada. It was a remarkable time, and Mike, I think it may have given you sleepless nights. It still does give me sleepless nights sometimes as well, thinking about there are people who we just trust that this will work, and most of the time it does. My own story about this, I was just thinking about my connection to this. I remember back in 1982 and 83, I was a student at Canadian Mennonite Bible College, and we were doing a choir tour in May, I think. And we went to little towns all over Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. So in 2 weeks, we would do like 12 churches. And it seemed like every church that we went, no matter the size of the town or the church, there was an Indochinese family sitting in the back. Maybe that's just my imagination, but it seems like that was the case. And as I was sitting there this afternoon thinking about that, one of the churches we visited was Drake, Saskatchewan, North Star Mennonite Church. And maybe I saw you there in 1982 or 83. I don't even remember what year it was. But anyway, I want to start by introducing or having our panelists introduce who they are, where they are now, and where they were when they first came to Canada. So if you could we'll go down the line this way. So, Claire?
I'm Claire Ewart-Fisher. Currently, I'm the Executive Director of Mennonite Central Committee, Saskatchewan. When I came into this world, when I came to Canada, I was in Rostron. Is that what you wanted to know?
Well, and what were, in 1982 or 80
Okay.
or 79, 80, whenever this started, where were you?
Okay, I was part of the Drake community, and Chai...
Drake, Saskatchewan.
Drake, Saskatchewan. And Chai and his family came to, he will tell you that part. Anyhow, I was in Drake, and that's why I'm here today.
Hi, my name is Chai Bupapan, and our family came to Canada.
Close. We're getting older. We can't hear as well. We're not young like you.
Our family arrived in a very cold winter. First day in Canada was February 1st, 1980. We landed in Saskatoon on a very, very cold day, and Claire was there with her family, picked us up, and we drove all the way to Drake. And as a child, it looks isolated. I think for me, I was talking with Claire that it's more exciting for us kids. When we first, I think that's how I feel, that it's more excited for us to come.
How old were you at that time?
I was 10.
You're 10.
And then my two younger brothers. But now when I look back for many years now, see those first day, I think my parents had the opposite feelings of unknown, because we didn't know anything about Canada. We came here, we just, no, Mom and Dad just want us to get away from all those terrible things, and here we are in Canada and to an unknown place. But we have only the positive things I can say about our experience coming to a small town in Drake.
But one of the things I think we have, which is great, is we have a couple of generations of newcomers here, and people who come at different ages have different perspectives, and it's really helpful to see that. Mai? Just, yeah.
Hi, my name is Mai. I came to Canada February 1980 from Malaysia. Came with my husband and 3 children. Then I get a ride from Grimsby to Hamilton. Mr. Jackson and Jim come and pick me up. Then I nervous, I scared, but when I look at them, I feel in love with them. Then came back to the home, I see everybody there. Then I don't know how to speak English. And I remember the day, it's very cold and lots of snow, and with different, country, then everybody seemed to be friendly, very happy. I never forget them.
I've always wanted to ask visa offers, did you always send people in the winter time to Canada? Dorothy.
My name's Dorothy Wood. I live in Grimsby. I came to Canada in 1968 from England, and I spoke English, so I know how I felt as an immigrant. And I can't imagine what these people felt not speaking the language. But I was involved with the Anglican Church in Grimsby, and we were asked by our then very young Irish minister if we would form a group to sponsor, and we chose to sponsor a family. Luckily we got one, a unit, a family unit. And and I'm still in Grimsby, still at the Anglican Church, except there were 2 Anglican churches involved, and we got a group, probably about 50 people that agreed to sponsor them financially.
Okay, thanks. Stephanie and...
My name is Stephanie Petsamai Stobie. So Stobie is not a very loud name. My maiden name was Puponsi. And I came to Canada on December 16th, 1979, and I was about 6 or 7 years old. And we arrived in Rosa, Manitoba, in about minus 40 degrees. And I think Rosa is even smaller than Drake, because if you drive down the highway, if you blink, you'll miss it.
Oh, that's what we used to say.
My name is Pinkham, and my family and I came to Canada on December 16, 1979. This is my daughter. You were right, the weather very cold. I wish the government should bring us here to Canada during summer better, right? And the cold weather outside. It's so hard to breathe when the sponsor pick us up in the airport. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I should say a little bit about Stephanie and Pinkham's. Their story is a little different. Their sponsor is not here, and that's sort of a reflection of sometimes it didn't always go that well. And I've heard Stephanie talk about her story. She's very gracious about it. But I think one of the things we want to explore is what went when things go wrong. How did it how did it play out, and how did it get resolved, if at all. And others may have stories like that as well. I want to talk to the sponsors a little bit, or ask them a little bit about the process. And Dorothy started a bit on this, but how did you get to make this decision? John Wheeler talked a little bit about what happened at the sponsorship agreement holder level. We just kind of got this, and then we, as he says, sloughed it off onto the churches. So a bit of understanding of this process. We have sponsorship agreement holders, and most of this will have what we call constituent groups. For Mennonite Central Committee, that's generally churches. So these constituent groups basically do the work. And people like me generally get involved only when there's problems. At least that's the way I work. So that's kind of the process. And I think that I'm curious always how a group just decides to do this. So Claire, how did you guys, what were you thinking?
I think we were probably thinking a variety of things, and depending on who you were talking to, we were thinking different things. The appeal came out from, well, first of all, the media does most of the PR work in terms of the world issues. And so when MCC came to us and indicated that that they were looking for sponsoring communities, when they came to Drake, they asked us if we would be open to sponsoring a family from Southeast Asia. And the church community together decided that yes, in fact, we would do that, probably at a congregational meeting. And then because Wally and I had just returned from Vietnam, where we had lived for 2 years. We returned in '75, and some of you heard the story yesterday about the way in which we left. They decided that in fact, yes, we would sponsor a family, and we set up various committees to do various kinds of work. Someone looked after housing, household supplies, transportation, language training, both for the parents and for the students, because Chai, as he indicated, was 10. His brothers were 8 and 6. And then we also searched the community to see if there were jobs that the parents could become involved in. And of course, we had to find someone to get hockey equipment. And because we had already had experience with folks from Southeast Asia, it made sense that we would take the lead in this, and that we would be the people to be their constant friends. And so they got more of us than they got from anybody else. So we were with them quite a bit of the adjustment time, and it was a great experience. And great kudos to the Bopapan family, because they were very flexible. They were able to make the adjustments that they needed to fit into the community. We basically experienced no kind of, we heard very little, if any, kinds of criticisms or critiques of the family. And yeah, it worked really well. We're very grateful for the relationships that we've been able to develop because of sponsorship with the Bopapan family.
I think flexibility is a key word, and you know, the newcomers often have to be very flexible because they're a small part of a bigger ocean. But sponsors often have to be flexible too. Can you think of places where you had to kind of say, okay, this isn't the way we're used to doing things, but we're gonna.
Oh yes. We had needed to suggest to Kim, Chai's mother, that in fact the windows should stay closed in the middle of winter, because with the temperatures of the, where the thermostat was set, and the windows open, that was probably not a good combo, that it was using more fuel than needed.
Because in Laos, in Asia, all the houses open doors and open windows, so, and the cooking, so that's how traditional house is like in Laos. But the strange part is, while I was in high school, most people who know me that I love winter, which is weird. My friends say I'm strange. I'm from Asian country. I love winter. I do. And I remember in high school, I would be sitting in a library alone somewhere, and I would open the windows. And then the librarian would come after me.
Okay, so we didn't do a very good job on that training. The other place where we needed to be a little bit flexible was that we were a Mennonite church in a very small community, the church membership about 250 people, and we sponsored a family that was Catholic. And so what we needed to do was to arrange transportation to the next town where there was a Catholic church. And so then we made sure that they were taken to the Catholic church to worship until we could convince them that being a Mennonite was okay.
Sometimes we go two
Two services.
services at one day, you know.
So you would go to the Catholic church and then the Mennonite
And
church.
I remember we do also during the high school year, we take correspondence from catechism class from Regina.
From the Catholics?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So we were, yes, very busy.
Very religious. One thing I neglected is to ask you what the composition of your family when you arrived. So you had two parents and how many children, or is that?
My mom and dad and us, 3 sons.
Okay. And where are you in the
I'm
order?
the oldest.
You're the oldest, and then you have 2 younger brothers.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And let's go to Grimsby now. In terms of the same sort of question, you said you started a little bit talking about how you got this started, but I mean, what were you thinking?
Well, I don't really know because I was most of the people who were in the group have now passed on.
Hmm.
But I was quite young. I had a young family too, and I just don't know. To me, it just seemed an opportunity.
Okay. And so, in terms of
The heating.
the heating thing,
When I went down to the house and found them running around with no socks on and the heat cranked up, we had to gently explain that it cost a lot of money to heat.
my sons do that too. So,
What else did you want to know?
well, yeah, just and in terms of
Well, I have to
adaptability,
say, they came to church the next day. They arrived on a Saturday, and Sunday they came to church. And Mai stood up and said thank you to everybody, and I think that won her over. And then when she started working at the hospital, as in the cleaning staff or whatever you call them now, some fancy name, domestic something or other, she always remembered the people who had sponsored her, and she'd bring them flowers and everything, and she still maintained that connection. Anybody she saw, she knew from the church. So I think she endeared herself to us right from day one. So. Well, you did. So other than that, and what amazed me, there was no internet in those days or anything, but there seemed to be an underground message system because she knew what was going on all over the place. And she said to me one day, I have to go to Hamilton. She wanted a rice cooker. She knew exactly where she was going, exactly what she was looking for. So all I had to do was drive her there.
Yeah, you told me on the phone, I couldn't believe it. Before internet, it happens all the time now, but
Yeah.
how did you do that? What was your communication? How did you communicate with your community?
Sometimes I don't know to talk English. I have to use by hand.
No, but
With the other Vietnamese community.
people.
Because I came to Grimsby, it's not too many. I don't know anybody from Grimsby is Vietnamese, so I only know the church and the people. Everybody talk English.
But you knew people across Canada and you knew what was happening to them.
Then
Who told you there was a rice cooker in Hamilton?
I don't know in the camp. So the people say, well, the first thing you came to Canada, you have to find a right cooking, because that's what you have to use every day. So I don't know how to talk English, so sometimes I have to use by hand. But Dorothy is very smart woman, so she knows exactly what I'm talking about. Every time if I don't understand anything, I pick up the phone, I call her, then I don't know what to say, so she just came over to help me out. I never forget her, and lots of people help me out around.
Okay, good. In terms of when those of you who came to Canada, let's start at the other end of the table this time. What did you know about Canada when you left? Did you know anything about this place? Did anyone tell you about it?
I don't know anything about Canada until the government of Canada picked me up to to Bangkok. And then the government in US follow us because I applied for 3 countries. I got them all. But the Canadian, I'm
Oh,
so lucky.
we're
you know,
so lucky
The
that we-
Canadian government came first. That's why I want to get out from the camp. So I came to, I came to Bangkok, Thailand, and the government in US follow us and asked me, we went to look for you in the camp, but you left before us. I said, yes, because Canadian government came first, I want to get out. And then they told me that, don't go to Canada because it's too cold. That's all I said, yeah.
One thing I forgot to ask you too as well is your family, when you came here, what was the composition of your family?
What that you got?
There was my parents and 4 children. My brother was 11 months old, and then I had a younger sister, and then there was myself, and then I had an older sister who was 8 years old. So it was 2 parents and 4 young children.
Okay. So you did you, as you were preparing to leave, did you have any expectations? What did you expect to find here? What?
I expect to take my children to Canada to have a freedom, to have a good education for them, to have a good future.
Okay. And in terms of your family, a lot of your family is here. Maybe they should stand up and say, are they all here? Or is it you? Okay, stand up.
Wow, big family.
I have my
Supporting mother. And so, and your family, is this all of your family?
I have one more son, but he supposed to come in today, but he very busy, so he can't make it today. I have my husband, name is Jung. My daughter-in-law, name is Colleen. My daughter is Hung, and my youngest son is Hung.
And when you were overseas, did you know anything about Canada before you came here?
When we left Vietnam, we came from with my family with 33 people. My husband is built a boat, and we have very small boat, 3.5 meter wide, 15 meter long, 275 people. When we came to the camp in Malaysia, looked like my husband brother. They have 7 brothers, then 2 sisters, but 2 sisters back home in Vietnam, but have 7 brothers with uncle, cousin, everybody at 23 people together. Then everybody go at different country. I have my uncle from go to USA, my brother-in-law from Sweden, 1 from Denmark, 3 from Paris, us from Canada. Then I have another sister-in-law came to Canada. Then I have 2 nephews, live in Canada too.
1 to Australia.
Then 1 brother from Australia.
Wow, so you're scattered all over the
Then
place.
I'm the last one, is lucky one, just get accepted, come to Canada. I'm very happy.
Well, we're happy that you made it here too. In terms of now I want to talk a little bit about when you first arrived here and what that meeting was like. We've all talked about how cold it was. It seems like it was always in February and always minus 40. But your first impressions of these people. Claire, when you were at the airport in Saskatoon, what did you think of these people?
Quite frankly, I don't remember. I was excited, though. It was something that we were looking forward to. We had spent a good deal of energy preparing our community for this, and so we were looking forward to it. Just a little story about when we were driving home. I think we were driving a big Olds or something, and the 4 of us, my husband and my 2 children and I, were in the front seat, and the 5 of them of the Beaupapon family were sitting in the back seat, and the only person that we could communicate with, other than using our hands and our faces, was Chai, because he had some English, and so he was our translator, and then when we got about 2 miles from Drake, okay, Drake is sort of like it's the center of the world, really, but it's quite small, and when you look at it like this, it was February the 1st, and it was one of these days when everything is white. everything is covered with snow, and the sun is not shining, so the clouds make everything white and look like the same color. Okay, so we're 2 miles out of town, and excited, they look over there, there's your new home. And I can't imagine what they were seeing because it was like nothing. Maybe Chai could tell us what his experience was.
Yeah, I'm curious. What did you think when you first saw Drake?
Well, for me, I thought I was excited to arrive to a new place, but like Claire said, we do come from a big city in the capital city of Vientiane, so you get used to people. Like you see people. You walk out. So when I arrived to Drake, we got into the house. It was a small house, warm, and was comfortable. Like we loved the house, and everything was in there. And I think Claire made our first meal. It was a stir-fried rice. Everything was in there. And but after you left, I think that's when I hit my mom and dad. So
Yeah. What did they do or say at that point?
I think it was, like imagine you take your kids to a place you unknown, and my mom cried
I'm sure.
after she left. But that was over quickly. We move on, and then I think Sunday when we went to church, we see people, and we will feel welcome, and it's always been like that.
And Dorothy and Mary, when you first met, what was that like? It was at the airport, I guess?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, okay. When you first saw these people from Grimsby,
When I came back from the airport, his name is Jim, and Mr. Jackson come to the airport, pick us up, come to the house. I think lots of people, Dorothy, Connie, Mary, lots of people there. So I just looked, and I don't understand English, so I never talk to them. I just say hello. Then I see the table with all kinds of different food in there. Then they sit down for maybe 15 minutes or a half hour, they left. So we're so tired, and everybody go to sleep. When we get up, we eat, and I said, oh, what kind of food we eating? But it takes us for a while to learn how to cook in here and eat food in here and everything. But I'm very happy I'm in Canada, and everything turned out very good. And my kids, everybody finished school, and finally this is my home. And thank you very, very much for Canada to bring us over here.
and Stephanie and Pinkham, do you remember first arriving in, I assume, the Winnipeg airport? Is that right?
Yes.
What
I
was that
remember
like?
We flew from Montreal to Winnipeg, Manitoba, at midnight. And the weather was so cold, and the snow was blowing very hard. And then I think to myself, how can these people live in it so cold? And then I feel freezing, So anyway, but my students didn't know anything. They thought snow is nice. So, and then the priest and one of the lady came to pick us up at the airport.
Sorry,
Winnipeg airport.
you said the
Yeah,
police?
The priest.
Oh, the priest. Oh, yeah. I was thinking
We were
that.
sponsored by a Catholic family, so the priest and another woman came to the airport to pick us up.
Okay.
And they smile at us, and we smile at them in return. We don't know how to speak English, right?
Yeah.
And then they drew us to Rosa, Manitoba.
Yeah. So there was no one in your family spoke any English or French, and they didn't speak any of your
They didn't
language.
speak my language
Okay. Okay. So, and how long was it before you were able to do any sort of communication with verbal? Like, when did you first get a translator?
When we were living in Rosa, I think 7 months later, I was looking for a Lao Association to come to help me to translate, to communicate with the sponsor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a while before you heard anyone else other than your family. speaking Lao?
Yeah, she had brought along with her a Thai English dictionary, and so she would communicate with the sponsors by looking up the words and pointing to it. And she tells me one story where she would write what she wanted, from the sponsors. So she wrote, "I want rice." So she looked up 3 words in the dictionary, "I want rice," and so then she would write that down, and then the sponsors would write back, "No rice. Rice cold, potato warm." And so that's how they would communicate. And she said she would use, like what you were saying, her hand and sign language to try and communicate with the sponsors until the interpreter from the Lao Association in Winnipeg came to help us translate and to try and deal with the problems that we were experiencing.
And when did you? How did you communicate? I mean, you.
I can say that the next day, you had a dictionary too. And the next day, I went down there and we sat down and I wrote their story so that I could tell the rest of the congregation. And it was pretty accurate, except she'd had diamonds stuck in her teeth instead of gold. That was the only mistake I made.
Okay.
Because they'd been ripped out by the pirates that they were attacked by.
So you would
And
go through the
we-
dictionary
we-
and point at words
Yeah,
and.
but we had 2 ladies from the church who had worked with the Literacy Council,
Mhm.
and they used to come in every day, 3 times a week. 2 times a week. Yeah, 2 times a week and work with them. We tried with Chong, but it was a hard job. I was pretty... And the kids went to school immediately, and they did very well from day one. And we hung in the nursery school so that he would be English ready for kindergarten. And they learnt English very quickly, because we tried to get them to assimilate. We put them in brownies and cubs and that sort of stuff. Because, I mean, Grimsby isn't out in the boonies. It was probably a population of about 15,000 at that time. So it's a small town.
But bigger than Drake or Rosa.
Oh, absolutely. It's quite civilized, really. It's one of the oldest settlements. It's the oldest Anglican settlement in the Niagara Peninsula. So there you are.
Okay. Now I want to move on a little bit.
And they did have good teachers at school.
Sorry?
They had very
And
good
good
teachers
teachers.
at school.
Well, and that's what I want to talk about next, is what sort of supports in the community you were able to find, or how did you connect with the rest of the community? And Rosa, for example, I mean, I've driven through Rosa and didn't blink, and so I know how small it is, but I don't remember a school being there. What sort of support in terms of English and school for the children did you find in the community?
The priest found a school for my 2 older children from Rosa, 1 hour from Rosa by bus to Waita, Manitoba. And the 2 younger ones I took with me to daycare, close to where I work in St. Malo.
So you worked right away in St. Malo?
Yes.
Oh, what was your work in St. Malo?
I work at a sewing factory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the town basically consists of a few farms. There is a Ukrainian Catholic church and a hall, and that is it. There were no other facilities, so we had no services in terms of support for language or schools. And so, as my mom said, we had to be on the bus for an hour to get to school, my older sister and I. And also, I do want to mention that when we went to Rosa, we were completely shocked, and I know we'll talk more about this on Saturday, shocked at the accommodations that the sponsors provided for us. It was basically a 400 square foot house for 6 of us, with no washroom, no running water, no furnace, no amenities, and so that was quite a shock for us. And this is December 1979, and in Canada, and having no running water, no furnace, and so there was a wood burning stove. So my father would, I think they provided us with some wood, and he chopped wood, and he would throw that in the wood-burning stove in order to heat the house for us. The kids didn't want to use an outhouse, so my dad had a bucket in the house for us, and then he would empty that because we were not going to use the outhouse. The house, okay, so not only is the house bad, but it was situated right in front of the graveyard in the Roman Catholic Church property. So the house was here, and then the graveyard was right behind us. The outhouse was literally, a couple of feet away from, a tombstone. And so we were very scared, and coming from a Buddhist culture and believing in the spirit world, this was the most terrible thing, right? And I think my mom and dad have said, they could have probably managed to live in that house, but to have it be situated in the cemetery, that was too much for them. Mm-hmm. And so that was our first experience of coming to Canada. Mm-hmm. And then the kids were scared because we hear about ghosts, and here we're right there in the cemetery. Mm-hmm. And so we had nightmares. We didn't want to go outside at night. And I think there was a story, I don't know, do you want to tell what the priest said if someone knocks on the door late at night?
He played joke with me. He said, if someone knock on the door at night, don't open the door, that's the ghost. Oh, I'm even more afraid. I said, I'm not going to outside. I'm not opening the door to anyone. Yeah.
And in this setting, how did you work at mediation, or how did you, your area is mediation now, Stephanie, how did you, looking back on that situation, how did you work at that communication issue, let's say?
I couldn't take it anymore. After 7 months, I was looking for the Lao Association, and then I went to my neighbors. I looked in the dictionary. I wrote a note for her. I would like to find the Lao Association, and then she found for me in the yellow page. So and then she allowed me to use the phone at her house as well, because we have no telephone either, no telephone, no TV. So then I called the Lao Association. Then I told him about the suggestion, and then in the weekend he came to help us to translate, because I wanted to move to the city. I wanted to study English, and he said I was too old to study English. The priest said that you're too old to study English.
And she was 28 at the time.
Yeah, that's terrible.
And in terms of that situation, when the Lao Association came in, do you know who they partnered with, or how did they work at this?
You mean about the sponsor?
Yeah, working with the sponsor, did they call in, say, the provincial government or the citizenship, what's called citizenship and immigration now, to kind of, how did you work with the sponsor at that point?
The Lao Association, he translated for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my mom just contacted Bunyong, who was the interpreter at the time, and so he drove out to Rosa, and he translated and played the role of a mediator, in trying to address some of the conflicts and concerns that our family had, regarding our accommodations, and that our living space was not adequate for the 6 of us, and so he translated and tried to mediate the case. I think my mom said that she wanted to move to Winnipeg. She was adamant. She said, I want to live in the city, and she's a city person. So this was, terrible for her to be in such a remote community. So she wanted to move to the city, and the sponsor said, no, the city is too big, and we don't want to move you there. And so then they said, okay, what if we moved you to Steinbach? And so my mom said, anything was better than Rosa. So she said, okay, I agree. Let's move the family to Steinbach,
which is about 10,000 roughly people,
yeah, and probably at
that
time
and closer to Rosa
7,
than Winnipeg. Yeah.
And so then they moved our family to Steinbach after that. Mm-hmm.
What was your housing like?
They moved us to Steinbach and provided us with another house that wasn't working. Apparently there was running water this time, but none of the toilets worked and the sinks. And again, we had to move because we couldn't live in a house like that. And I think the city actually tore down the house after we moved out. And we decided to find our own lodging. And so my mom went and looked for her own place. And that's when we just said, okay, we're no longer going to keep in touch with the sponsors, just because they haven't been very helpful to us during this whole time.
Sure, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Was there no voluntary control on this?
I don't know. It was.
Well, who sponsored that, and where was the government in all of this?
That's my question that I've been trying to get. I don't know because I wasn't there, but somebody who was involved at this. Naomi,
All I can say is that wouldn't have happened, I hope, ever in Ontario. Number one, the sponsor organization would likely not have been approved because they would have had to show that they had the capacity to house you and to have, the resources to support you. And CIC would have been responsible for monitoring, for meeting you when you met your sponsor and for looking at your accommodation after you had been housed. And you would have, hopefully, I think we would have been sure there was at least an interpreter that we could have contacted if there was a problem. That's what I hope would have happened.
I think Manitoba would have hoped that as well. John, do you have a?
Well, this should not have happened in Manitoba either.
Well,
It fell into the cracks, I'm sure. But did you have a friend or family eventually in Steinbach that then sort of looked after or helped you instead of the sponsor who was probably far away?
No, I don't have any friend and family is in Steinbach the first time. When we moved there, the neighbor is so nice to us, and they invited us to church with them. And they took my children first go to church. They asked me, can I take your children to church with us? I said, sure, go ahead, but I want to rest too. I work so hard, I work 2 jobs when I moved to Steinbach to support ourselves. And then they were really nice to us. They help us. They're not our sponsor, but they help us, support us. That give us everything that we need. That time I feel a little bit more comfortable.
So that's what I meant. Was there somebody that jumped in to help?
Yeah, my mom went to an ESL class after working 2 jobs. She was able to find time to go to ESL classes, and that's where she met Mrs. Elda Thiessen and Mrs. Mary Lowen from Steinbach, and they were her teachers, and so they befriended her, and those 2 families basically adopted our family into their community and provided the love and care that we needed during that time. And Henry and Elda Thiessen even co-signed our mortgage so that my mom and dad could buy a house in Steinbach, 2 doors down from where they were living. And so that was really, really helpful. So we didn't have the assistance from our sponsors, but from the friends that we made in Steinbach, they were very, very helpful. And so to this day, we are very grateful to the Mennonite community for taking our family in and providing us with emotional support and other support that we needed when we first came to Canada.
Are you still friends with
That's
her?
the flip side of Manitoba.
well, yeah. I think one of the things that I wanted to explore, though, is that sometimes it didn't always go very well, and I wasn't sure exactly how it was worked out back then. I mean, whether the government. I know what would happen if that happened to me now. I mean, CIC may pull MCC's agreement if things like this would happen, or I'd have a serious talking to anyway. But this was such a large movement. I was just wondering whether, how can you keep track of what's going on in a small town in Manitoba when you've got, 30,000 other cases, individuals across Canada coming that year? So,
I think that's the most important thing about any sponsor. They have to realize you can throw money, the government can throw money, but you have to have that emotional support to be able to. I mean, as I say, I was an immigrant and I spoke English, but it's still hard to relocate to another country, especially if you have a young family and you're not able to get out to work and stuff. So I think this is what has to be borne in mind above all else, that the emotional support is needed to anybody that's coming to this country.
And what were the sort of things that you did to provide that? Or you were thinking, okay, I've had this experience and I know
I
that
was just there.
you were just there.
And the kids went to school 5 minutes across the road. It wasn't far.
So that made it
And you had
easy.
a nice warm house.
What made...
I open the window. My whole house, light on everywhere.
No, but I think it was, and I was there every day pretty well, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Everything I needed, I just called Dorothy be there for me.
Well, and not only me, there were others too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, sure.
because we had to we got Chung a job eventually, and he had to get a ride to work and stuff like that. Because we wanted to get him in the steel company, but he wasn't heavy enough.
And May, what were some of the things that the sponsors did that really made it good for you to settle? I mean, what were the things that really helped for you? Can you think of things that they...
They always have me, they're always happy, then I never forget them, and till this day, I do, they be all my best friend forever.
Okay.
The first, after they'd been here 1 year, she threw a party for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all sitting around eating your food.
That's
So-
great. In terms of, we've heard some challenges, obviously, but one of the challenges that currently often comes up is money management. How did you handle that in Saskatchewan, Drake, Saskatchewan? In terms of your responsibility was to make sure that they stayed off welfare for 12 months at the very least. How did you talk about managing money and manage the money that was provided?
We started off by making sure that both Sam and Kim were exposed to, like maybe 4 months of ESL. And then, even though Drake is very small, I said like it's the center of the world, there are two businesses. There is the Drake meat processing plant there that now is employing 70 people. And then there was also the Bergen manufacturing where they were making farm equipment. And as it turned out, both of these businesses were looking for workers when the Beaupapon family came. So Sam worked in the Bergen manufacturing, and Kim went to work at the Drake meat processing plant. So very early on, they became independent. Before the year was up, they were bringing in 2 incomes into the family.
Mm-hmm. And did you have to talk about, okay, you need to set aside this kind of money for doing, or did they have good instincts in terms of managing money?
These people lived a life in Laos. They knew what they were talking about. Where we needed to provide guidance was to say, okay, now these are your expenses.
Yeah.
Because there were expenses that they may not have been familiar with. So we needed to tell them what their expenses were and where they could go to buy the things they needed. So really, I didn't ever get the sense that we needed to hold their hands when it came to financial matters.
Okay. And in terms of in Grimsby, how was the financial
Well, we paid their rent,
Okay.
I think, for the year.
Like, did you-
pay
okay.
the rent and everything out, then after,
Or it wasn't long.
maybe after 5 or 6 months, my husband have a job, so we're able to pay the rent ourselves, then they should have some money left to give us some money. I don't know how much, but it's some. Then we're able to pay for the money when we came over. We have to pay for the plane ticket. Yeah, we have to pay for the flight to come to Canada.
Right. That still happens.
She's the best money manager in the
Then-
world.
And that
They
helps.
give me so much money to spend for a week. I have to mention how much I have to spend.
But you're a good money manager.
I don't know.
And
He was in business before.
oh, okay. Well, that business is business everywhere, isn't it? And in terms of Rosa and later Steinbach, how was the money? I mean, there are obviously difficulties in terms of that, but how was the money managed with that? Do you know?
I used to have my own business in Laos. I know how to manage the money. And because when I came here, I only rest for 1 week. They sent me to work right away. 3 weeks I got paid. Then because the house and the one they gave us to live, you don't have to pay rent, but I have to pay for the hydro. And the priest make me, now you get your check, now you pay for your own hydro.
And in terms of when you moved to Steinbach, basically you were on your own in terms of financial management, and at that point you did your own financial, you were self-sufficient in that, at that point?
When we moved to Steinbach, my husband got a job, right? When we were in Rosa, he had no job. He only went to help people in the farm for free. Our house had no fridge, then the farm people gave him the eggs, 1 dozen to bring home, work for them all day. So when we came to Steinbach, he got a job, so we both have income, so we support ourselves. Then after 3 years, then we had to pay back to the government for the plane ticket to come to Canada.
Okay. How would you say that your relationship has changed over the years between the newcomer and the sponsor? The first year can be a very intense year. So the first few days or first few weeks, it's kind of like you're spending a lot of time. It's kind of like in some ways our children. It's we're very intense at the beginning, and as time moves on, the kids move on, and we see each other less, and our relationships changed. How did you see that changing over the years in Saskatchewan, in Drake?
Well, I think as time passed by, I think the way we feel about our extended family gets stronger, and I can tell that we are still family today. I consider like Claire and other people who were close to us since the beginning as my family, and because we have 2 families living in Drake. We came in 1980, and my aunt came alone. Her husband died, so she raised 4 boys and 1 girl.
So were they sponsored by the church
Yeah,
too?
by
Okay.
the church. And then so we have 2 families that kind of we grew up together in Laos, and then we were so happy to have them in Drake, and we were together again. So I think overall we can say that our experience has been very positive. Claire is my family. But when I think 5 years ago, when my cousin decided to have children, and they called the first son Drake, named after Drake. So that's, Scottish.
And has the family, they've moved away from
Move away, yeah.
some
We still
of
have a home there. I still work at Drake Meats.
you still have a home
But
in
I
Drake?
commute. Our home's in Regina. And
Okay.
then same thing now. Our family's relocated in Regina. Most of our families are in Regina. My cousins are there. And I think with our experience, we only have the 2 families, and we happen to be now in the same area in Regina and Saskatoon, but mostly in Regina. So, and Matt, her son, just moved there not long ago, and Lara's there too. So now we all have full circle, I must say.
That's great. And in terms of from the people who are already in Drake, how did they feel about this family just moving in? I mean, was there pushback? Was this kind of like, these people don't belong in rural Saskatchewan, or?
I may have just been way too excited about the probability of the families coming, that I was not aware of any pushback from the community.
And as they started moving away, was there kind of a sadness, like, oh, our friends or our families leaving, or was it? It was time,
Okay, I was no longer living in the town
Oh,
at
okay.
that time, so I really don't know. But just a little sidebar here. Our son, as I told you yesterday, is Vietnamese, and so it was kind of neat because Matt is the same age as Bonport, who is the youngest Bopapan brother. And it was really neat because now they could be good friends, and I think the fact that, well, it works both ways. I think the fact that there was an Asian in the community when the Bopapans came, that made it easier for them to be there. And it also made it easier for our son to be in that community because there was an Asian family that came to live. So it would work both ways for us.
And Dorothy and May, how do you think your relationship has changed over the years, do you think?
Well, As you can see, we're still here all together. But
You said you had lunch together the other day.
oh no, we went to. Oh yeah, we did. But yeah, but we don't see each other for ages, and then you know. But the first year, after the first year, I kind of backed off a bit. But then I needed a cook at the daycare I had, so she came and cooked. And then we got a job at the hospital, and there was some things said which we told them to belt up. And
So there was
but
some
there was-
pushback in the
oh,
community.
Yes, but I mean, you know, you've got that wherever you go.
Hmm.
And even in the church initially, but I mean, we didn't take no notice of that, we just did our thing.
If you
So-
don't notice it, it's not there.
Well, it is there, but you don't allow it to overcome you.
Hmm. Okay.
So,
And
and we're still friends.
oh,
And I went to their weddings and everything, so, you know, friendship, no, more than anything.
right. Stephanie and Pinkham, has there been any sort of connection or reconciliation since you first arrived, or is that chapter passed?
After all, we don't have a good relationship with the sponsor, right?
Yeah.
But we don't hate them. But I just frustrated and feel regret. The first year, I wanted to go back home, you know, but I cannot go because the communists there, and so you can go.
Yeah, I think the first year that we were here, I mean, we as kids, we don't experience the same things that our parents experience, but I think my mom was very depressed that first year, especially, not being able to communicate what they needed, and their sponsors not listening to what they would like from the situation. And so she was quite depressed, and she, I think, told the sponsor, this is what I remember, some of the stories, she told the sponsors, like, if you will pay for my plane ticket, I will go back home. Because what I had back home is better than what I have here in Canada. I had a house with running water, with a washroom, and here, I have nothing. And so she wanted to go back at first. But I think, now, after having been through this and moving to Steinbach and meeting good friends there that we continue to keep in touch with and visit with yearly still, that has changed. And so, yes, we didn't have a very good relationship with our sponsors, but we've made new friends, and these people, were instrumental in helping us adjust to Canadian living, and so, we are very happy to be here in Canada, and even though we had a very terrible beginning here, but in terms of the sponsors, we haven't really kept in touch with them since then, and a number of them have passed away. I think there were 5 families, is from what I can remember from our conversations. We only met the priest and 1 other woman. None of the other families who were sponsors even visited us once since we've been in Canada. So we don't even know who the other sponsors are or what they look like. And so there would be no way of connecting with them. And I think the priest just passed away a couple of years ago, and the woman who met us at the airport also passed away about 3 years ago. So so we don't really have a relationship with that group, but we do have a very good relationship with our Steinbach Mennonite friends.
Well,
In touch until today.
I'm really sorry that happened. Sorry. I'm just remembering, we need to wrap up soon because May has to leave, but, and I just am remembering that Chai says he has some photos from when they first arrived, and I don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah,
with-
it-
Okay, because the computer reset or something like that. And I don't know the password, so maybe we won't. Oh, you can do this? Okay. While we're waiting for that, I'm sure there are questions or other stories, so if somebody has a question about what that was like, or something, or your own recollections, yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hung. I am Mai's daughter, and clearly very proud of my mother. Sorry. I think the phenomenal conference that you've put on really punctuates not only our gratitude, but clearly the emotional benefit that it's had on refugee families. And certainly I am a product of the tremendous work that many of you in this room have put forth. My brother and I came to this country very, very young, and for all intents and purposes, our childhood was normal and absolutely perfect in every way. One of my earliest memories was actually waking up on Christmas morning. We didn't have a concept of what Christmas was like. We opened the door to mounds of snow and this huge garbage bag full of beautifully wrapped presents. And as a 6-year-old child, I can tell you it was phenomenal, and I think if I reflect on my children's Christmas now, that's exactly what it was like. So as we were coming in with my sister-in-law, we don't even really reflect and take the time to acknowledge the effort and the courage that it's taken for refugee families to come here. And that's partly because it's been so seamless, and we are certainly a case of where it's worked out perfectly and beautifully, so much so to the point that in our everyday lives, this is our norm. And for my children who don't have that appreciation, certainly one of the things that I've taken away is to be able to pass on that story. But because it's been such a smooth and perfect integration into the Canadian system, we are, for all intents and purposes, Canadian and have always been since the time that we've come here. So I really wanted to applaud your work and really thank you for everything that you've done. Certainly hearing all of the backroom things that have needed to come together to make it possible for families has been tremendous learning for us. But really, if there is a plea and an urge moving forward, absolutely important work in terms of settling refugee families, and please continue doing what you're doing. So thank you.
So I'm a photographer. My dad was not too many people can say that they have the mom and dad's dating pictures. My dad used to be a photographer when he was young, and they're beautiful. I'm jealous sometimes. So dad take a lot of pictures of mom, of course. And so these are the pictures that he was able to bring to Canada. He bought over 200 pictures of all the pictures that he can take. A lot of family come here with zero. I have friends who have zero. The parents burn all the pictures. So they have no childhood picture, nothing what life used to be. So whatever happened from Canada on, that's what they have. So these are just the pictures that very important to me. I'll just quickly go on. And this is us 3 boys. That's me on the left, and then my younger brother, that's same age as Matt, Claire's son, and then Ponsak, Pony, that's the second one, so us 3 boys. This picture is our last family picture with my mom's sister. My mom and her sister lost their dad when they were young, so they basically taking care of each other as they grow up. So in one way, we've been doing the same thing ever since, that the 3 sisters looking after us and then each other, and now the kids grow up together. So this picture is very important to me because it's been selected by Pier 21. I don't know you know about Pier 21. There's a project coming up in 2017. I don't know if I should say that or not, but it's called Canada Day 1. So this picture will be part of that. It's part of the oral historic project that they've been working on. So this will be the part of our 150 years anniversary for Canada project. And okay, this is our last Christmas at the refugee camp in Nong Khai, Thailand, before we left to Canada. So this is the last day in Bangkok before we left to Canada. So we're wearing shorts, and things changed after that. This is, I think, January 31st. This is my auntie's family in 1980 in a refugee camp. So her husband died, so she raised 3 sons and 1 daughter by herself. And this is a very special picture for me because Claire made me my first birthday cake in Canada. So this is at the farm in Drake, outside Drake. This is English. Claire and Wally was teaching mom and dad English class And I think this is the end of the program. So 81, we were reunited with our cousins and my aunt in Drake. So this is all skinny, but now we're not anymore. So. So very proud day for us. In 1985, we became citizen. So Claire and Wally was there for us. Thank you. And to me, I think growing up, we have different ways to give back, and I think my way is the way I see things. So I think that's my gift, is seeing things, beautiful things around us all the time. So my influence with photography is my dad and Claire's late husband, Wally. That's why I use Nikon. It's in memory of him. So I also volunteer photographer for different organizations, and this is Open Door in Regina. This is World Refugee in 2006. This is my very proud project I did for them. You know how immigrants come here, and this is to demystify about refugee. And it's amazing some of the people I met and photographed them. It's very hard to get them together, but we did it. So that's a great thing. This is very amazing thing for me, because when I first came to Drake, Wally gave me a first National Geographic magazine, May 79, and in it was Saskatchewan. So I didn't learn a lot about English, but I knew everything about Saskatchewan looking at the pictures. And then in 2010, my first picture was selected by National Geographic. By accident, by timing, I'm not quite sure. I entered a contest, I didn't win, and then a year later I got a letter, which is strange. And then they said, we would like your pictures to be in our largest library. So they have their own library that's over 100 years old. So I have two pictures. I couldn't get it done last night. I was doing PowerPoint on my phone last night. So Drake, this is our home. This is my niece and nephew from, they didn't grow up in Drake, but we want to show them. But we have a nephew that's also, this is Drake, named after Drake, my nephew. So I would like to take him sometime to Drake and to show him this is where our family came from. That's my cousin. This is World Refugee 60th anniversary 2010. There was a story about me that the exhibit went around Canada.
That was something that Citizenship and Immigration did.
Yeah, CIC, yes. Yeah. And then this is my special family here. Matt got married last year, so of course I have to be the photographer. So these are the beautiful pictures I shot in Saskatoon, Matt and Dawn. And that's my little brother too, so Matt. So that's it.
Are there, oh, go ahead.
The most important question is, are you getting back in time for the Grey Cup on Sunday?
Yeah.
Isn't everybody in Saskatchewan
I'm
going?
not quite sure it's good to do that here.
Yeah.
Go, Ticats, go.
Oh, I forgot.
Oh, I didn't have that planned, but that would be an interesting, yeah, that we
First
have.
of all, thank you for your story, which is a terrible one. I mean, it reminded me of stories of immigrants coming to Canada in the 1800s. But the only satisfaction I think we can take is they were pretty rare, the circumstances you found yourself, and it was unfortunate that it was you. But thanks for turning out so well and staying with us. I'm sure you thought you'd been sent to re-education camp in Laos. One thing I did want to mention, because this is always a complaint that we visa officers would get about, well, please prepare these people for arrival in Canada. They have no idea what's going on.
We still say that.
And I always used to say, well, you know, short of having a freezer in my office where I can open the door and stuff the applicant in and with the temperature at -40, it's pretty hard to explain to someone from a tropical country what -40 is like. But I will give enormous credit to the Mennonites again, who are always so thorough, and the feedback system that they have. By the time I arrived in Bangkok in 1984, you had a couple there who were at Panatnikom, which is the transit camp in Bangkok for all the refugees coming out from the camps, where they went before final departure. And they ran a course, it was either 1 or 2 weeks, where they had a little grocery store set up, and they had Canadian money of varying amounts and coins. And they spent the 2 weeks kind of giving them some just very, very basic skills about what's going to happen when you get there. And as I say, that was in place by 1984, and I thought it was a wonderful idea. So hopefully the ones who came later had a few more skills. Thank you for surviving, and thank you for contributing to Canada.
I'm curious when Canada orientation, when IOM started doing Canada orientation abroad. And sorry, 98 is when they started doing that. Okay, that explains it.
I just wanted to make a comment on secondary migration. We did research in '81 in Cape Breton, and in Cape Breton they sponsored all through Cape Breton 102 sponsorships. And we interviewed the sponsors because by '82 there were only 2 families left. And what we were interested in is whether they resented that they had spent all this money to sponsor refugees and then they moved on. And not one family had any resentment. They said, after all, our own kids move off to Toronto. What do you expect the refugees to stay way out here? There are no jobs. So that, in fact, often the secondary migration took place, but they made friends and they helped support the family initially, and the families went and moved off. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Thank you.
Yeah, I hear the same thing today in southern Manitoba. They say, well, some of our kids stay and some of them don't. Some of our refugees stay and some of them don't.
I'd just like to turn the question around, though. Would the refugees have preferred to go to a different place for their first destination so they didn't have to uproot themselves and move because there was no employment or because there were no schools? Or did they feel that going to that smaller community first was a really welcoming opportunity for them, and then they could, move on afterwards? Howard, did you do research from the refugees' perspective or only from the sponsors?
That's a good question in terms.
Basically, they had no choice.
Well, yeah, but
Had they had a choice, they wouldn't know the difference between Saskatchewan, Manitoba, or Prince Edward Island.
but the question is, would they have rather been in a large city maybe rather than a small town or something?
Well, I'd like to follow up on that. Because our people, when they came in the 20s, they didn't know where they were going. They were so happy to get out there, and then they were welcomed there, so they settled in Manitoba. My father always wanted to go to a warmer climate, till he died. No, almost, because he did go to Ontario. So I think that maybe the question is really begging the basis.
Well, anyway, I noticed that it's 5 o'clock and we don't want to keep the senator waiting. There are many more stories out there, and I think we need to collect those, and that's, I think, part of what we're doing. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much.